Pastor Larry and I were talking in the back, and I told him something that's kind of hard to believe, but we were talking about coming from simple beginnings. And Pastor Larry talks a lot about growing up in the inner city, in the ghetto. Well, I grew up in rural poverty. It was 1971 before we had indoor plumbing. So put it in perspective. And so for us, when everybody around you poor, you don't even feel poor. But if you think back on it, 1971, before we had indoor plumbing, I was 6 years old. So it tells you the level of poverty we came out of, but God had a plan. He had a plan. He gave us wonderful parents that allowed us to understand that our capacity to dream was much greater than what we saw around us. And I started my career in retail making $4.35 an hour working for Target. And that's my journey from Target to the Home Depot to JCPenney. So now let's talk about the rest. We'll talk about, Pastor Larry talked about my family gospel group. That's the actual picture. The guy to the right with the afro, that's me, believe it or not. So I hadn't seen that afro in a long time. But I played bass, and that really little tiny girl, that's Renata, that's sitting behind Pastor Tiz. So that's the whole family. And we sang all over the Southeast. And my parents did a great job of keeping us in the church. And I remember, when I was in college, I came home for the summer to work in a convenience store on a summer job. I was working a graveyard shift, 11 to 7. I remember my first Saturday that I worked, I got home Sunday morning about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and I went to sleep. And I remember at 10:30, my dad's pounding on the door saying, "What are you doing? It's time for service." I'm like, "Hey, Dad, I worked last night." He said, "Understand one thing. If you live in this house, every Sunday morning, you're going to go to church." And as I've shared with Pastor Larry, I check in with my dad a couple of times a week, but I always call him every Sunday night. And the first question he always asks me, "Did you go to church today?" And I'm a grown man running the company, but that is his way to reinforce the importance of God in my life.